everybody. My name is Kevin Adams. I'm a 2014 inductee into the Polka Music Hall of Fame, and I'm conducting an interview today as part of the ongoing IPA Interview Series. The guest today is very well known in the polka field. He's been a great leader and actually a pioneer in the polka industry. He has many years as a band leader. He's been a DJ. He ran one of the largest polka festivals in all of the country, many recordings. He's a Grammy nominee, and he was inducted into the IPA Polka Music Hall of Fame in 1974. My friend, Dick Pillar. Dick, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, Kevin, and it's nice to be talking with you again and to be reminiscing.
Yeah, for sure. So listen, one of the things I didn't mention in my opening, but I was a member of your band in the mid-'80s. I worked for you. You're my former boss, so I'm thrilled to be talking to you today.
You certainly were. I remember working with you from 1982 to about 1987. You made many very, very large contributions to the band, not only as a trumpet player, but as a writer, an arranger, and a vocalist.
Thank you, Dick. Those were good years. I have very good memories of all those years and the jobs with you. Let's go back to some of your earlier musical experiences. Your first instrument. What was your first instrument, Dick?
My first instrument was, believe it or not, a guitar, because I had been involved in the music of the days, which was the 50s, 60s. And so I kind of got into that and country western music. Hank Williams back in that day, in the early country pioneers. And from there, I got into a combo, a three-piece combo, and then from there I went on to high school. And in high school, obviously, I wanted to be involved in their music department, and there was no room in their music department in their marching band, obviously, or their symphony orchestra for a guitar. So I talked to the music teacher, and I said, I'd really like to do something. What do you think I could do? And at the time, he suggested that perhaps a trumpet would work. And I said, well, that's great. I've always admired the trumpet. And he said, well, in the band, we have enough trumpet players, but I'll give you an instrument that plays with the same mouthpiece and the same fingering as a trumpet. And I said, fine, what is it? And he says, it's a mellophone, similar in sound to a French horn, but not up to that quality. And so that's how I got started.
Oh, that's interesting. Dick, we share that. My first instrument also was guitar. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah, my parents had bought me back then one of the top guitars in the nation. It was the Les Paul version of the Gibson guitar, and I still have that.
So tell me about when you put together your first band.
My first band, well, as I said, I started in high school with the combo. And then from the combo, I went into my first band, and I think you have a picture of that there. And we called the band Richard Pillar, I was very formal then, and his Cadets. And we used that name for about a year. And then as we were starting to get popular in the local area, people were starting to get confused and think we were part of the Coast Guard Academy Cadets in London. So that's when we changed over to Dick Pillar and his orchestra.
And who were your earlier musical influences, either individually or your musical influences as a band, as a polka band, when you got into leading a polka band?
Well, they were the bands of the day, the Connecticut bands, really. Those were the ones I was familiar with because my parents introduced me to polka music not only through records, their 78 RPM records that they had, but they liked to go to hear the polka bands, and they took me to the Polish National Home in Hartford, where all the top Connecticut polka bands played on a regular basis, and they were the ones that influenced me. So that would be Ray Henry, Al Soika, Walt Solek, the Joe Rock Band, the Connecticut Twins, Frank Bonorowski, and Gene Wisniewski, and a few others.
Very good. So when was the band ready for its first recording? And tell me a little bit about that, how that came about.
That was in the 1960s, and we came out with a single 45 RPM record, and there was a song that made the pop charts by the Mattis Brothers of Pennsylvania. It was called the Rummy Polka, or Pijaki in Polish. And it was a nationwide hit, so we said, hey, let's record that. And then my drummer, Jimmy Sakowitz, and trumpet player, Billy Carroll at the time, wrote an oberek called The Trumpeter's Oberek. And so that was our first 45 recording, preceding the first album.
Now, I know you eventually formatted your own record label, and you had your own record label for many years in there. Was your first recording on that label, or what label was it on?
Yes, it was on my own label, and the reason for that was only the top bands in the country could get on the #1 polka label in the East. That was Dana Records. Found by Walt Dana, and I was an unknown, so there was no chance of doing anything, and we were anxious to get a record out, so we put out the 45, and then my good buddy, the late Al Soika, who had a studio in a barn in Somers, Connecticut, and we recorded our first album, which was called Raise the Roof. And that was in 1964, and the album cover was designed by an IPA, I forget what her title was, but she was a representative to the IPA, and she designed the Raise the Roof cover.
Yeah, that's a very good album, Dick. And that was recorded with Al Soika in the barn. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, Al was recording his own band in the studio. He lived in Somers and on a farm, and in the barn he converted it into a recording studio.
Very interesting. So I know Steljo Records is the name of your record label, and as that label developed, I know, of course, yourself, Dick Pillar Orchestra, record on it. I know the Crew Brothers did their first 2 albums maybe with you. Is that right?
They did 3 albums for us. Yep.
3 albums. Also, the Golden Brass.
That's right. Their big hit album that really put them on the map nationwide with Let the Sunshine In.
Yeah, for sure. Good stuff. And Ray Henry.
Steljo, I developed the label in honor of my parents. I wanted to pay tribute to them for all they did in helping me get started and being wonderful parents. And so I took my mom's name, Stella, and my father, Joseph, and that's how we got Steljo Records.
Very good. And did I miss any other acts that recorded with you? Ray Henry, I believe, did a recording or 2 as well.
Ray Henry, several, and I'm trying to think right now. My memory's a little bit foggy. A band from New Jersey, Happy Richie, I think, was the name of the band, and we did several other bands as well.
Yeah, very good. Now, I mentioned earlier in the interview that I was a former member of the Dick Pillar Orchestra, proud Pillar alum is how I always put it. So I played with you in the mid-'80s. And there are several other nationally known people who came through the Dick Pillar Orchestra who played with you, notably Polka Hall of Famer, the late, great Eddie Skinger.
Absolutely. He was called the Platinum Voice of Polkas. He started with the Connecticut band Walt Jaworski, and then was hired by Ray Henry to be his bass player and his vocalist. And wonderful memories of Eddie. We play his music to this very day.
Also, Jackie Libera, Polka Music Hall of Famer.
That's right. I remember Jackie, and I guess he had his own little group, and then he agreed to join us. And again, I remember driving from Connecticut up to Southbridge to pick him up because he didn't have a driver's license yet. and take them to their jobs and then bring them home again. So wonderful memories, and again, a great talent, the clarinet, the sax, and did a lot of wonderful things with Jackie.
And you mentioned earlier your original drummer, your drummer for many years, Jimmy Sakowicz, who recently was a Leon Award winner.
That's right. He joined us once we started using the Pillar name after the trio, and that was in 1960. So he put a lot of years in with yours truly. Also,
Richie Bernier, who was a Leon Krasicki Award winner as well. And Richie's still playing with the Maestro's Men, along with Jackie.
Absolutely. He went from our band, I believe, to the New Brass, and then the Happy Louie in the band, and now with the great sounding band, Dennis Polisky and the Maestro's Men. And then a few years later, his younger brother, who was a drummer, joined our band for a short period of time.
Another, should I say, notable Pillar alums, my old roommate with Eddie Blazonczyk. We were on the road with Eddie Blazonczyk together. Ed Walensky got his start with you.
Gary. He gave the name Weasel because he was always being very foxy and trying to outsmart everybody and outdo everybody, so we called him the Weasel.
I've known him as Weasel when I was on the road with him. Again, like I say, he was my roommate with Eddie. Ed Weasel Walensky, a really fine trumpet player. And also, speaking of trumpet players, Kevin Krauth, who went on to play with Jimmy Sturr and also now is with the Maestro's Men.
Absolutely. Kevin, a fine, fine musician.
Kevin was my replacement with you, I believe.
Yeah, I remember that was when we also organized a bus trip, and we were asked by the White House to play at in Washington for the president's musical park performances. They had a place outside the White House, and people that were waiting to go in to view the White House, they had a setup area with bleachers, and we were asked to play, so we did, and we put the word out, and we ended up with bringing 3 buses from Connecticut, several from Pennsylvania, and other states, and it was quite a time, and I remember that because you just mentioned Kevin Krauth. He was a trumpet player then.
Now, something else in your past that I know about, and we'd like to share with the listeners here, is your showing your leadership, actually, in the forming of another organization in polkas, very famous organization. You were one of the originators of the USPA.
I absolutely was. We were getting large crowds and people coming from throughout the country to New London for our Polkacelebration. I gathered a lot of the band leaders, DJs, news media, promoters, and we had an informal meeting. And we said, you know, IPA is doing a great job promoting polkas out of Chicago. We need a great promotional unit here in the East. And so we formed the United States Polka Association, USPA.
And also you were very instrumental in promotion of polka music in your own right in starting what became, I would say, one of the largest polka festivals ever in the United States, Polkacelebration. So tell us a little bit about that, origin of it, and your first years, or anything you'd like to say.
Oh, I could talk for hours and hours. We started by my band playing on a weeknight, I should say, at Ocean Beach out on their boardwalk. And they were drawing hundreds and hundreds of people every week. And I finally said, you know, why can't we try a polka day? And so I talked to Tony Pero, the manager of the beach, and we decided to have a Polish day on a Saturday. And it drew a full house. The capacity at the time was about 1,000 people in the hall. And it worked out so well. People said, oh, this is a perfect place to have an event with the beach and all the attractions. And so I said, well, I'm going to try a weekend. And the following year, I believe that was 1966, we put on what we call the Polish weekend. And I believe you have a red, white, and blue poster of that was held that year with several bands. It grew to 11 days and nights. And when I decided to go from the weekend to another day, my parents got nervous. He said, we'll lose our shirt. And then they really got nervous when we went from the 4 days, because each year the vacationers all came a day earlier. And so it went to 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 11 days and nights.
So 2 weekends and the entire week in between. That's just hard to imagine.
I believe it's the first in the country to have that duration for a polka festival.
Yeah, I have many good memories of Polkacelebration for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Some of the best times there on the beach and polka music in the ballroom. And yeah, it was an amazing thing, Polkacelebration.
Out on the beach in the picnic pavilion, where it became a tradition. To throw pillar into the ocean, clothes and all, during the afternoon performances of the various polka bands. And one thing I remember is so many people, young people, met there and eventually, because of Polkacelebration, got married.
But that's not the end of your stories of your polka promotions. You also had your weekends in the Catskills, legendary at that time. I believe you ran 4 a year. You ran in March and April, and then your Polkacelebration was in July, and then you also ran 2 in the fall.
That is correct. April, May, October, November. And we started at the Pines Hotel in the Catskills in 1980, and we put in 62 weekends between there and 1995, and then we moved to other hotels, which meant our total was 74 polka weekends in the Catskills.
Wow. And as we're talking here, Dick, I'm going to play just a little bit of a live video clip. This is from the mid-'80s. This is one of your weekends at the Pines with the Dick Piller Orchestra. And this is from a video that you produced and released on VHS, Live at the Pines.
Yes, and we featured our band, all the polka fans, and the Karolinka polka dancers, young polka dancers from the Middletown, New York area.
Yeah, those were a lot of fun, those Catskill weekends, for sure. I have noted here 74 weekends. Could that be right?
That is absolutely correct. 62 at the Pines, 9 at the Raleigh, and others at other hotels there.
That's amazing. And Polkacelebration, a history of Polkacelebration there, 33 years. Totally amazing, Dick, the polka promotions and what a leader you've been in the industry.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been a great run, I'll tell you. Then we had our Christmas parties for seniors during the week for 21 years at the Aquatrip here in Connecticut.
30 years ago, we didn't plan on becoming a polka band. It just seemed to happen naturally. The music fit with our mood, and we noticed that it was something that the audience paid a particular attention to when you were playing other forms of music. They might have been having a good time and enjoying the particular music, but when you played a polka, something special happened. It's almost indescribable. And for that reason, we've stayed with it all these years, and it's just a very, very special thing. Not only the music itself, but the activities that involve around it, the closeness, the people. I think that's more important to me probably than the actual music, the feeling, the atmosphere that polka music and polka activities generate.
And of all your experiences in polka music and playing up and down the East Coast, obviously, Long Island and other places that you played. Do you have a story of any memorable jobs, any particular ones that stand out in your mind?
Well, Frankenmuth was always a big engagement for us. We had a great time, and in addition to Long Island and New York, Massachusetts, they all were great, whether they were small clubs or major festivals. It was just a thrill joining the other polka bands and playing for the polka public.
So how about a breakdown story? Do you have any memorable breakdown stories?
Sure. Well, I'm sure most of the bands probably had breakdown stories with their vans or what have you, but I had been a Ford believer, and I had no problems with that. And one year we were hired to take and play in Detroit for a major event. And that year I purchased a new maxi van put out by Dodge, and we blew an engine on the way to Detroit. So that was memorable. Other memorable stories, we played in Massachusetts an engagement, and at the time we had our station wagon before the vans were in vogue, and with a trailer on the back, and on the way back from Massachusetts we broke down, and all the members of the band ended up pushing not only the station wagon but the trailer that was attached for several miles until we could get to a gas station. And then one other story that stands out that was a nightmare, we're playing in near the Boston area, and it was in the winter, and after the engagement we always stopped in Walpole, Massachusetts, right off of the major highway, and we'd go into the diner and have something to eat, and we did. And it was so cold, and we had the station wagon where the girls in our band always sat in the very rear seat where there was no heat. So I left the engine running, and we went into the diner. And lo and behold, I came out of the diner, started heading for the car, and there was no car. And so I looked behind me to see who must have gotten out early and moved it, and all the musicians were there. Lo and behold, two teenagers at 2:30 in the morning took it for a joyride. Fortunately, they didn't destroy any of the car or the trailer. So those are some of the unusual stories.
Those are always a lot more fun to reminisce about later than when they were happening, of course. I know I've had my share of break stories as well. One more thing which I'd like to hear about is any other stories of you in the studio, either as a producer or as a band leader. You wore several hats for your Steljo records. Maybe a story about either the Crew Brothers, Golden Brass, or Ray Henry, or your own band in the studio.
Well, they worked out very well, fortunately, because these bands that we recorded were professionals, and they had prepared properly, and I just feel everything went fairly well. Al was very good. Al Circus served as the recording engineer, and he had an excellent ear for music, as you know. And so I can't complain about anything. I don't know of anything major happening along the way.
But a lot of good experiences, I'm sure, in the studio with those bands.
Oh, absolutely. It was quite a challenge, and I loved it. I wish we could have done more.
And what would you say is your greatest achievement in polka music?
Well, we mentioned the events that I ran. My radio show is now into its 57th year. One of the outstanding events was the Polka Mass that we performed, the first Polka Mass on the East Coast after, I forget the name of the priest out in Michigan who introduced the first Polka Mass. And we had been playing Polish picnics for a priest in Massachusetts, and when we were running Polkacelebration, we had so many out-of-towners coming. They always were having a problem finding the local church. And so this priest said, why don't you run a polka mass? And, I thought about it. I said, oh, my gosh, I don't know. But we thought about it. And then a DJ, Marion Roble from Massachusetts, and a few other people said, that would be great. So we got some songs together, and we did the first polka mass, and it immediately became a hit, and then other bands started doing polka masses. And we were careful, about the songs we played, the music, and especially the lyrics, and played many of the well-known hymns in the churches. So that, to me, was really a great achievement. And several years after the first one in New London, the word got around the area, and the Bishop Riley of the Diocese of Norwich, agreed to do the polka mass out at Ocean Beach, and we chose the Olympic swimming pool area, and we had the altar out there. The people were in the bleachers, and during the mass, it was just a wonderful mass. But in addition, the seagulls were flying in and stopping near the pool, and it was like doves coming down from heaven. So that stood out for me as well.
And your polka masses, that evolved into a recording. Your
That's right.
polka mass recording, a very good recording.
Yep, we're very pleased with that.
So it's fair to say that you've had a great deal of success in the polka field and as a polka leader and innovator. And what do you think sets you apart from others and has contributed to that success?
Well, there are many things. First of all, you remember Bobby Godin, the fellow that with his parents had always followed our band. And the music got to him, and it did to other people that were medically impaired. And I've got to say, the first reason, he used to always say, the Godin, Al Godin we called him, he said, Pilly, you're just the luckiest guy on earth. And he believed it, but I believe it was God. God kind of led me through things. When I started a band, there was no such thing as a band leader school to figure out how you run a band, how you do things. It was trial and error, and listening to the area polka bands, the big bands. And part of the success was I believed in being professional. I didn't allow smoking or drinking on the bandstand, and I was criticized by that, and some musicians wouldn't even play because of that. And we went out and had custom-made gold jackets made in the early days, so we were the best-dressed band. My mother made my own jackets and costumes, and one was with white and silver on it, and the people were calling me the Polka Liberace with that. But I guess that kind of gives you an idea where we were coming from. And my image, of course, was the red, white, and blue. And the reason for that, of course, I was a patriotic American, as most people are, and believed in our country. But I also felt back in the early days that, with polka music, it kind of became ethnic-oriented, which is wonderful in its own way, whether it's the German, Slovenian, or any other type of polka music. But it was not reaching the average American. And I thought because of the language, I would concentrate more on English vocals. And I think it helped with our audiences, but it turned off a lot of polka people because we weren't into the heavy Polish style. So that was one of the successes that went both ways. It worked against me and it worked for me.
Well, that's interesting, Dick. When you talk about the Pillar legacy and what you always value, the red, white, and blue, there was also an undercurrent always in your music, as I played with you, of positivity, of looking on the bright side. And I have to tell you, my Love Notes recording that I eventually did do as a leader. They were songs of hope, positivity, faith overtly in a couple of references in the songs I've written. That filtered down to me. I feel it to this day.
Well, I appreciate what has been my career in polka music.
You've been such a leader and an innovator through the years. Do you have any advice for younger people on leadership qualities or what it means to be a leader?
Well, it's difficult, as I say. You know, there's a constant pull between polka music that appeals to the younger people versus polka music that appeals to the older people. And sometimes it's almost impossible to bridge the gap. If you're turning on all the seniors and the older people who have been responsible for the success of polkas, then you're turning off some of the young ones. I remember a story. I asked one person one day, I think it was a well-known polka person, and I said, why do you like and prefer Polish vocals? I said, do you understand what they're saying? And the girl replied, no, I don't know, but it sounds good. Whereas an English translation, it seems to turn them off. So that's a problem. We just have a lot of hurdles to overcome, and I just have a good attitude, work hard. For the young people, practice, and a lot of the young musicians are doing that today, and they're following in their parents' footsteps. And remember to concentrate on the audience. The musicians are the ones that prefer and perform the music, but it's the general public out there that you've got to attract. Because the musicians can't be coming to all the dances, they're out performing. So, and have a professional attitude.
Yeah, that's right. That's all good advice. You know, one other thing, I jotted it down here at the bottom. I'm reminded, I believe that you also have a history in polka music of being a music teacher. And if I'm not mistaken about this, I believe Wally Dombrowski or Richie, or both of them maybe, were your students, and you actually taught them trumpet at one time. Is this true?
Yeah, I was teaching trumpet and guitar at my home in Uncasville, and they came over and I gave them trumpet lessons, no charge. They didn't pay for it. I was very proud of how they developed.
The first trumpet instructor for Wally Dombrowski and Richie Dombrowski. Very interesting.
Yeah, I know. As it related to polkas, I'm sure it helped them a great deal. There was, you know, one problem I did have in the early years when we formed the USPA. And I explained earlier in the interview how we did it and why we did it, but a lot of people thought we were challenging the IPA, and that wasn't the case at all. We worked together. And Leon Kazicki, the first founder of IPA, or first president, I forget his title, my age is showing now, and I were great friends. You know, we worked together. When I recorded the Raise the Roof album, as a matter of fact, IPA invited us to play in Chicago, and we drove out there. As a matter of fact, I had, what do I call them, tires, retread tires on my station wagon, and we went through 3 tires before I realized I'd better not use retreads anymore. But we were received very warmly in Chicago, not necessarily by the fans, because we represented at the time the Eastern Tempo. And before we went out to play there, they had the Connecticut Twins perform in Chicago. And Stash and Yash, great band, but they had the fastest tempo of any polka band at the time. And I guess that turned off the dancers. And so when I went out to play, we started playing, and a lot of the fans got off the dance floor. And I said, what are we doing wrong? But fortunately, the Chicago musicians during our break came up to us and said, "My golly, you guys are really doing a great job for a bunch of kids." So that brings me to the IPA, and our association with IPA. As a matter of fact, at Polkacelebration one year, the Hall of Fame was building fund was being considered by IPAs, and so we raised a raffle for them at Polkacelebration and raised over $2,000. And then, since then, I served, in addition to being in the Hall of Fame, one of the greatest honors of my life, as a trustee. Now I'm a trustee emeritus. I wrote a magazine, a monthly magazine that the IPA had a magazine called Polka Guide. And I called my column New England Briefcase and talked about everything going on up here. And then another idea, along with the IPA, Eddie Blazonczyk and I were chosen as co-hosts for one of the Hall of Fame banquets. So, there was no animosity between the two organizations. That's what the point is that I'm trying to make. And there's plenty of room for both.
Well, you certainly have been an important person in the history of polka music, a promoter, a band leader, and an innovator with the festivals. Your legacy in polka music will live on for sure, Dick, and your contributions are appreciated. So thank you very much, Dick, not only for your time here today, but for your service and leadership in the polka industry.
Pleasure has been mine, and I'm grateful to the entire polka industry, all the polka fans, the bands, the DJs, everyone who promotes this music that we all love so much. Thank you, Kevin.
And once again, this is Kevin Adams, Hall of Famer, inducted in 2014, and you've been listening to a Hall of Famer in his own right, Dick Pillar, who was inducted in 1974. This has been part of the IPA Hall of Fame Interview Series. And thank you for watching and listening. And if you have an interest, you can see other interviews with all your favorite Hall of Famers at IPApolkas.com. So, Dick, until I see you again, I hope things go well for you, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Stay healthy, my friend, and regards to Barbara.
Bye, Dick.
Bye-bye, Kevin. Thank you.